So, you might remember last year, I made a video about the Mi 10 Ultra. I loved it so much that if it wasn't a China-only exclusive, I probably would have called it Phone of the Year. Well, this is the Mi 11, and this one's going global. I will say the unboxing experience is a bittersweet affair. The phone arrived to me in this huge orange package, but then I opened it up and realized, oh, the actual retail box is kinda tiny. There's an insert on top, which has a couple of manuals and a clear TPU case in it, and the phone. That's pretty much it. Now, there are two sides to this whole minimalist packaging fiasco. Because on one hand, yes, you probably do have a charger at home. And so this is saving space because they can now make a smaller box. And this is saving future landfill sites from extra unnecessary waste. But, see, the charger you get in a phone's box is almost always the best charger for that phone. And so especially on something like this, which supports blazing fast 55-watt charging speeds, you're probably not getting the full phone experience by just using the charger you already have. But that said, with the China launch of this phone, Xiaomi did give people the option to ask for the charger if they wanted it, for free, which is kind of weird, but I guess it means that no one's really losing out. I just hope that they bring this to the global launch, which should be next month. Anyways, whoa. You know, the whole reason that last year's Mi 10 Ultra holds such a place in my heart is that I remember this moment I had with it. This moment where I took one look at the phone's spec sheet, mouth partly open, and then I took one look at the phone's price, and I couldn't for the life of me understand how they'd done it. The specs were up here, the price was like here. And so I'm happy to say that I've had a pretty similar experience with the Mi 11. Just keep in the back of your mind when I tell you this that this phone is $600, or at least that's the converted Chinese price. And listen to this. You get a 6.81-inch Quad HD Plus AMOLED 120Hz refresh rate screen, which just so happens to have pretty much the fastest touch response and the highest brightness of any phone ever. You get the Snapdragon 888 chipset, which makes this effectively the fastest Android on the planet right now, not to mention 8 to 12 gigs of the fastest RAM, 128 to 256 gigs of the fastest storage, and I'm not nearly done. It's got a 108 megapixel main camera, a set of Harman Kardon tuned dual stereo speakers, it supports 50-watt wireless charging, as well as the ability to reverse wireless charge other devices. This truly feels like Xiaomi's ace up its sleeve. $600. So what's the catch? Well, it's definitely not this screen. Xiaomi to me has always been a company who makes good displays, but at the same time they've never really been in the highest tier. Till now. I really can't emphasize just how premium a video watching experience this is. You pull open YouTube and you feel this instant sense of smugness as you realize that you can play videos in not just 1440p, but with HDR and, to be honest, the level of brightness that seems to outclass even the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, which is a phone that's only 5 months old and fundamentally twice the price. You get MEMC technology, which can automatically add frames into videos to make them even smoother than when they were shot. Not to mention, the screen itself is made from like the best glass available, Gorilla Glass Victus, for twice the scratch resistance versus last gen. And I think the front camera here is like their smallest hole punch cutout on a phone yet. Oh yeah, and the speakers are amazing. And I don't know if this was intentional or not, but through the back of the phone, you can kind of feel the sound. It's like the whole phone is humming the tune of whatever you're watching. You might find it annoying. I personally liked it, especially if you're gaming and let's say you're driving a car, you can feel the engine. And let's talk about gaming, because this phone is fast, which is probably not really a surprise to you. I mean, the Mi 10 was fast, and yet this comes with a quicker chip, a quicker display, quicker storage, and more efficient software. But this thing is really fast. And I thought the best way of showing you just how fast was to find something that the last generation of phones struggled with. So I pulled up a Nintendo Wii emulator, I opened Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, set it to run at 2 times the native resolution with extra effects added on top, and sure enough my Galaxy Note 20 Ultra was feeling the burn. 15 frames per second on average, sometimes falling to 5. This phone wasn't. Almost consistently going at around 30, it felt like playing a native Android game. Obviously though, just the fact that I had to pull up such a niche scenario just to show you the difference does also go to show that it's not a night and day difference in most situations. But the final thing that I need to add to this list of things that's impressed me is the software. Because the MIUI 12.0.12 on this phone genuinely feels like an interactive piece of art. There are things that I don't like about it, like the excessive bloatware and the shapes of the icons, but you can change them. And beneath that surface level annoyance, you will find extreme levels of polish. You really get the feeling that they've looked through every animation and every menu and really thought, how do we give this flair? And that's resulted in a software that is far from the cleanest, but it's so rich. For example, when you go to change a wallpaper, you've got all the ones you own, but also an endless feed of other wallpapers automatically retrieved online. Don't like them? Just refresh it and you've got more. And if you find a wallpaper you like, you can just set it to find similar images and automatically create a slideshow on your lock screen. Or let me just show you the settings on this phone. You want to see your storage? Well, it's actually visualized as a tank of water, which even obeys the laws of gravity. And if you want even more information, tap, and you get everything. Their new Mi Mover application to transfer data from your old phone? That's not exactly something you'd consider a cool experience, but they've put so much work into just making it look good. They've even got a setting here which fires a certain frequency of sound to get rid of dust from your speakers. There's crazy customization, a gaming mode that rivals that of actual gaming phones. You get the idea. And I think the most interesting part of this is that this is the phone pre-update. See, Xiaomi's actually promising just one massive update to MIUI 12.5, which has just a ton of optimizations specifically for this phone. But we'll hold off on that one. We'll believe it when we see it. And if you are enjoying this video, then a sub to the channel would be ace. The only very strange exception to this thoughtfulness is that somehow, in the display settings, they've got the resolutions the wrong way round. Don't think I've ever seen that happen before. And on that note, there are some things that I don't like. Nothing that ruins the phone, but just a couple of really strange decisions. Like if you look around this phone, it's got some really nice flourishes, like an IR blaster, a dual SIM tray, and the waveform-like speaker grille. But it just doesn't feel great. I'm usually a big fan of vegan leather, like the Oppo Find X2 Pro has this really plush quality to it. But they've made the back of this phone just a little scratchy and plasticky. It feels a lot like Samsung's Galaxy Note 4 from 2014, and that finish was not particularly liked. I think the cameras could be a lot neater looking, especially given that there's only 3 lenses here, and I really think that if a phone is going to have text printed on it, it's gotta be something special, not literally the word Xiaomi 3 times. But they do have a glass version of this phone, which I think does have a cleaner overall aesthetic. But then we've got the front of the phone. And I've already said I think the screen itself is awesome, but it's just that I don't really like what's happening around it. Like, I think the concept of this screen, the fact that it's curved from all 4 sides, is a good concept. I think it has the potential to be great. The idea being that smartphones are increasingly gesture-based, and that gestures should be smoother if the phone's glass is curved. But the way that they've done it here means that 1, screen protectors do not play nicely. And if you can't find one that goes right up until the very edges, it will end up creating a ridge that your thumb just keeps hitting. And 2, it exaggerates the phone's asymmetry. You realize that the bottom bezel looks like it's a different thickness to the top bezel, which in itself looks like it's a different thickness to the side bezels. And what really makes this pop in not a good way is the corners. The corners are the only points where this display doesn't slope off, and so they kind of look like they're jutting out. It's almost like the screen's not been stretched quite right across the canvas of the phone, but you can somewhat address this by using wallpapers that mask the edges. These are all pretty minor gripes in the scheme of things, but there is one slightly more fundamental issue with this phone. But I do just need to quickly talk about the camera, because this is not just the most organized camera experience I've ever had, but it's probably the most fun, too. It's got filters that are much more than just slight single color adjustments. You've got cinematic effects like phantom and nostalgia, which change the theme of your shots. And kind of hidden away for such a big feature, a whole set of movie modes. They use AI to create everything from a dolly zoom effect, to the ability to freeze frame just parts of a video, to simulating having a slow shutter speed. And this third little lens here is actually a macro camera. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's a macro camera that's actually quite good. I think I've only ever said that about one other phone in the past before. It's only 5 megapixels, it's nothing crazy, but because it zooms in at the same time as having an incredibly short focusing distance, at times it genuinely feels like using a microscope. And there's so much more. There's dual video, there's long exposure, there's supermoon mode. The point is, this is a lot of fun. Now, if you wanted a more technical response than that, then I would say this is an A-grade set of cameras. It's not quite A+, where I would rank the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra and the iPhone 12 Pro Max, but it's ahead of A-, like the OnePlus 8T. You see, the main 108 megapixel sensor that we have here is On one hand, it's aging. It's technically the same camera that we saw on the Mi Note 10 from 2019, but on the other hand, it's still, in almost every scenario, keeping up. It's got stellar detail, almost top-tier dynamic range, and some of the most delicious background blur you can get on a phone. In a lot of shots, you can very clearly see more detail here than on the Samsung. Which kind of makes sense because while Samsung converts its 108 megapixels down to 12, Xiaomi converts to 27. But I would say that its low light performance is nowhere near as consistent, and it's pretty easy to blur. But this is actually also the first phone which has night mode video. It's very interesting. Like, this is a sample of normal video from the Xiaomi and the Samsung, and if we turn the feature on, it kind of seems to sacrifice detail for extra brightness and a bit less noise. It's not groundbreaking, but it's more than a gimmick. There is also an ultra-wide camera here, and there's little more to say about it apart from the fact that it's fine. But two things are lacking. Zoom, this thing kind of sucks at it, and video consistency. It seems to shift color and exposure way more drastically than it should be doing as your subject makes slight movements. Oh yeah, and the battery capacity is 4,600 mAh. It's plenty. I've been running it in what I would call a worst case scenario, and I'm still getting 6 hours of screen on time. So that's at Quad HD resolution, 120Hz refresh rate, and every AI mode turned on, which it does warn will increase battery drain further. And then for charging, because there isn't a charger in the box, I've just been using a OnePlus 8T brick, and it's filling it up in just under an hour. Right, so at this point, the Xiaomi Mi 11 almost looks like so much phone for the money that it's embarrassing for the others. But there is one big asterisk that we've just got to put next to that. Pricing. Because yes, this phone is the equivalent of $600. That's not some sort of marketing trick or early bird sale. That is the base price of the phone. In China. And that's not always an issue. There's a lot of products that release globally where the price all around the world is fairly constant. But in the case of Xiaomi phones, I feel like I've seen enough of these launches now to suspect that when this does release in other regions, they're going to make it significantly more expensive. For what I'm assuming are three main reasons. One, Xiaomi phones are generally made in China, and so naturally it's going to be more expensive to export them. Two, a lot of other countries, they whack a load of extra tax on top of that. UK. And three, in China, Xiaomi makes a lot of money from its services, like Xiaomi Cloud. And so I think because of that, they're perfectly happy making a bit less on the products themselves. Whereas this isn't the case in the West, where we're very used to Google services. And so because of this, with last year's Mi 10, even though that released at the exact same price that this Mi 11 is releasing at, in the UK, it dropped at £799, which if you convert it back to dollars, is over $1,000. That's 1.8 times as much money just for the convenience of being local. And so what I would say about this Mi 11 is, if it comes to the global launch and it ends up being the equivalent of $1,000, then wait, I think you might well find something better releasing fairly shortly after. If it comes out at $800, then I would say it's absolutely worth it. And if by some miracle you're able to get it for $600, then shake that person's hand right off. The one thing to just keep in the back of your mind though is that this is the Mi 11, and if history is anything to go by, there will be a Mi 11 Pro, and quite possibly a Mi 11 Ultra. And so, as crazy powerful as this phone is, if what you're after is the very best of the best, that's probably coming soon. Okay, if you enjoyed this video, do consider subscribing, that would be amazing. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you